Okay, so we've been working through the different purifications, and today we're moving on to the purification of mind. And so in the 10 non-virtues, we'll be doing the non-virtues of the mind over the next few times. So I think the most important thing that I could say really is that, at least coming from my own experience, is that I had the experience of spending time for about a year every day. Once a day I would go through these 10 non-virtues, and it was when I was new to Buddhism, fairly new. And I found, without any intention on my part, actually, that a lot of confusion cleared up in my mind and in my life. And I felt like in retrospect, that I had gone through decades of my life not really getting it. Like, to me, the understandings from looking at the 10 non-virtues and the 10 constructive actions, they just make sense because they're so tied in with karma. They make sense about how things work, how people work, how society works, how things work. And I really feel like I was taught, and everything I was around had a lot of confusion in it about, I mean, the one example would be like, it's, if you don't get caught, it doesn't really matter. You kind of have that idea. We have all these things like this, and they just really, when you feel in your heart, it doesn't really work. And there's so many things like that we experience in the world. So I think that that this certain level of confusion or ignorance about really, I guess you would say, cause and effect, just by going through these every day, kind of looking at my life and taking what did I do today, and how does this feel, how do I feel about it, and how do I want to be, and all that. It just something lifted, and it was one of the things that helped me early on to have developed some conviction in this path. So that's just what I can say from my own experience. So now, talking about the purification of mind, the text says, your disturbing attitudes and the imprints of mental negativities appear as darkness at your heart. When struck by the forceful stream of light and nectar, the darkness instantly vanishes. It's like turning a light on in a room. The darkness does not go anywhere. It simply ceases to exist. Feel that you are completely empty of all these problems. They are non-existent. I think that's quite clear. I think the two things I would say about that is, one is, if you're anything like me and you focus too much attention to your heart and it starts to, you get any kind of discomfort there, you should change a little bit how you do this visualization. So I tend to often have that sensations at my heart if I focus on it. And I had this before I came to Buddhism. I didn't really know what it was. And now I've learned from my teacher that I just make everything more expansive. So if the light comes into me, instead of just like so focusing my attention on my heart, I just wash it through my body. I just keep everything kind of more expansive, and I don't focus my attention at my heart, and that works. And then the other thing about this is this last line: feel that you are completely empty of all these problems. They are non-existent. And I think this is just the aspect of how healthy it is for us to feel that our negativities are purified, and give us this feeling of our positive qualities going forward, and that we can actually, through this practice, do something with our life and who we are. We can enhance our good qualities. We can abandon our negative qualities, and we can become the kind of people that in our heart we want to be. And I personally like to, when I do these non-virtues, and often when I do a purification, I often look at the constructive actions, and I kind of try to purify any obstacles to those qualities arising. And so it gives me a little more balance to think about where I'm going rather than just always abandon, abandon, abandon. So the 10 of the 10 non-virtues, the last 3 are of the mind, and they are coveting, maliciousness, and wrong views. So now we're moving into the area of the mind, and as the Buddha has said in the Dhammapada, the mind is the forerunner of all actions. All deeds are led by mind, created by mind. If one speaks or acts with a corrupt mind, suffering follows as wheels follow the hoof of an ox. Mind is the forerunner of all actions. All deeds are led by mind, created by mind. If one speaks or acts with a serene mind, happiness follows as surely as one's shadow. So that pretty much says it, how things work. Our mind is what's kind of driving our actions, and these things aren't inherently good or bad. They just either lead to suffering or lead to happiness. That's how it works. Okay, so these 3 non-virtues, coveting, maliciousness, and wrong views, they are all kind of like the results, the kind of the full-out expression of the 3 poisons. These 3 made, if you categorize the 3, all the afflictions kind of down to the simplest categories, it would be 3, which would be attachment, anger, and ignorance. And so you've kind of taken each one of those to its fullest, and what do you end up with? Coveting, maliciousness, and wrong views. And so these are completely mental action, mental activity. We don't have to say or do anything. We don't have to move a muscle. We can do them anywhere. And so it's very important to observe the mind and learn about the mind and learn about these things coming up, and it helps us to see how important our motivation is. And these thoughts flow very rapidly through the mind, and so that's the great thing about doing meditation practice, and especially retreat, is then you really get to see your mind, and then you can really start working with it. So of these 3 non-virtues, they can't exist in your mind at the same time. They're different moments of mind. The thoughts move from one to the other. So you could have, in a minute even, all 3 of these come up, but you aren't going to have each 3 in one moment. And so that's just how it works. And they come up quite easily, and they're the motivation oftentimes that led to these actions, these pathways of action that we talked about previously, of the body and the speech. And of course, the mind is the hardest of the 3 to, body, speech, and mind. It's the hardest to control, like a wild elephant. So we kind of work first with the body, then with the speech, and we don't, what's good to know about that is that then we can't be so hard on ourselves, because even the great masters, you read in all the sutras, they talk about their mind as a wild elephant. It's hard to control. So we need to be realistic. And so of the 3 non-virtues of the mind, when they weight them, the worst of the 3 is the wrong views, and then that's followed by the malice and then covetousness. And that's really because the wrong views, that really sets you up for everything else. In fact, of the 10 non-virtues, it is the worst. It's worse than killing. Killing comes next, but wrong views is the worst, considered the worst, because it sets you up for every kind of negativity. And so when we've been talking about these 10 non-virtues, we've been using this framework, and I wanted to spend some time talking about that first. And so we've been using this, the 4 branches of what a complete karma or complete action. And so the 4 are the object, the complete intention, the actual action, and the completion of the action. And I just want to talk a little bit about that second one, the complete intention, because there's a lot that goes on there. Remember, as we've gone through this, that one had 3 parts. So there was the correct recognition of the object, there was the motivation, and then there was the affliction. So these afflictions, these 3 poisonous attitudes, attachment, we're superimposing something that isn't really there, or we're exaggerating when we say fall in love with somebody, or I have to have this, or I have to have that, you know. We're thinking there's something there that actually isn't there. It's a distortion of the mind. Our mind is deluded then. And so we cling to that object as like there's happiness in it, you know, and that's what's going on with attachment. And then with anger, it's similar in that we're exaggerating or superimposing, but now we're just flipping over to the negative. We're seeing, they say both psychology and Nagarjuna and the Buddha's teachings is pretty much you're 90% exaggeration when you're in anger. That's how far away you are from reality. So anger has a spectrum of states like irritation, annoyance, being critical and judgmental, hostile, holding grudges, belligerence, rebellion, rage. So, you know, all of those states are categorized as anger, and they're all unrealistic. They exaggerate and they project. And then ignorance, there's two kinds. There's this kind of foggy obscuration, the fundamental ignorance, where we're actually projecting onto things that they're really solid, they exist from their own side, they're inherently existent. And then there's the one, which is what we're kind of more dealing with in most of these non-virtues in terms of how we're thinking about it with this is there's this ignorance of cause and effect, like what I was talking about at the very beginning. We kind of just don't get how things work. We don't realize there's an ethical dimension to our actions. And so, you know, you may do something and you don't think it's going to have any repercussions later. Just like I was saying, you know, if I don't get caught, it doesn't matter. You know, well, that isn't really how it works. That's not how it works. You can think it's that way, but that isn't how it works. So that's what the teaching about karma is about. So, so we're just talking in generals here. It's interesting to know, for me, it was interesting. I like to understand how things work. And they say that any of the non-virtues, any of the 10, could be started with any of these 3 poisons and completed with another. So things shift in your mind. So you might first covet something, and you might even do that out of anger, but you're going to end up with attachment. So some of them, they always end with a certain one, because that's the one that really takes you over the edge. But they could start with any of them. And so they say that things like killing, harsh words, and malice are always completed with the motivation of anger, although they may start with something else. And so when we spend time thinking about this, which takes a while, it's helpful because it gives us a different kind of perspective on our actions, and it actually helps us to understand, you know, how when an action is complete and when it's not is a useful thing to know. And it actually can help you modify your behavior, because you can find yourself in the middle of something and you have some sense just from learning a little bit about this that, wow, this thing is, you know, this action has like parts to it, and here I am, I'm at this part and I'm about ready to really make this complete. I mean, you can actually, you know, you have some time and some wherewithal sometimes to modify how you're doing things, because you have this learning. We've learned these things, and we can realize, no, I don't want to rejoice in these negative things. I don't want to let my mind go there, and you can stop yourself. Okay, so in the last point, and then we'll stop for today, is we've also, when we've been talking about karmas, we've been talking about result that's similar to the cause. And that's, you know, we're kind of saying, if I do this, then I'm going to have this experience. And it makes it sound like it's A goes to B. But it's more complex than that. Everything is a dependent arising. And so, yes, there's these connections in our experience, but there's many factors that are contributing. So don't take it like things are that simplistic when we say the result that's similar to the cause, as we've been talking about this. So there's many factors that go into everything that we experience. And so we'll continue in the next ones.